Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Making Action Happen, the show that we do for our Action 22 members in Colorado, around the country, and now around the world. I'm Sarah Blackhurst.
And I'm Brian McCain.
So this morning I was at the store and I saw the cover of the Pueblo Chieftain, that's a local newspaper, and our guest is on the front cover of that looking fierce. She is the president of Pueblo Community College. She's been there, you've been there 11 years. And we had a great, and she's one of our newest Action 22 members, PCC is. And so we had a great visit with her a week ago or so. And we wanted to have you on the show today to talk about all these things. But it's exactly what I was wanting to talk to you about, and it's economic growth. But before we get too far into that, I want everybody to know that PCC, Pueblo Community College, has really developed into a powerhouse of not just a community college, but something that universities, and it's really because you guys have focused on tech, don't you think?
Well, I think what I think we focused on is business and industry
Okay.
and what they need. And so it's not all technical education. There is also the professional side of things, but really I think our claim to fame is that we pay attention to what business and industry needs, what our community needs, and then we try to respond.
That's the beauty of community colleges, and why we're such a big fan of them is because you guys can pivot, and whatever you need, you can adapt curriculum far quicker than a university. So tell us a little bit now. I know before we talked about this a little bit before COVID, you guys were, I mean, the top of your game. So tell us about that.
Oh, it's bittersweet because we had really gone through some years of really important strategic planning. One of the pieces being moving away from developmental education. We've learned that that is not a necessity for so many individuals to be successful. And so we worked hard at removing developmental ed from our curriculum and putting our students directly into college level courses. They have performed beautifully, but that was tough on the college because we lost a lot of FTE. And
Oh,
so
really?
we struggled through that, and we were at that point where our students were retaining, they were persisting, they were graduating, we were seeing increased enrollment. And then March of 2020 hit, and boy, everything just stopped.
It went
And
on its ear.
yeah, but you know what? We are resilient, and we responded. We made sure that we had the right technology in place so that our students can continue to engage in as much remote synchronous instruction as they possibly could. But it's not the same.
Right.
It's not the same
Right.
No, it's
as
not.
having a discussion face to face, being able to see body language and facial expressions. But we were able to persist, and we actually ended up with a record number of graduates this year. I think it was
Oh, wow.
over 1,900 graduates.
Wow.
Really?
So we did something right.
Yes.
But boy, our whole country, our community, the state, we're having a hard time rebounding.
Yeah.
The supply chain is broke. People are apprehensive about coming back to work or coming back to school. And so we just have to continue to promote the fact that we need an educated workforce in order for us to thrive and grow. And that's what we're committed to.
And most people don't realize, but PCC's footprint is larger than just Pueblo.
Oh, yes.
You're all over.
Yes. I like to remind folks that we have a service area of 11,500 square miles, 2 mountain passes, and all the challenges. Because that is it. Think about it. You're a 2-person shop, and sometimes communication errors happen with 2 people.
Right.
Can you imagine the challenges that we have with 600 people and 6,000 students in this large service area? So, but I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us to really engage in our rural communities as well. We're down in the southwest corner of the state, where it is truly rural, And we have been able to identify some pathways to success using technology.
Right.
And same thing for the Canyon City, Custer County area.
Oh,
So,
for sure, for
mhm.
sure. So tell us a little bit about, it's Durango is your other campus, right?
Well, we have a campus in the Mancos Cortez area. It's
Okay.
right between Mancos and Cortez. We have a site in Durango. We have a wing of the high school, the Durango High School. We're in a
Oh,
wing there.
yes.
And then we have a site in Bayfield. And so we're pretty much up and down that southern corridor from
Right.
Utah all the way to Pagosa Springs.
Well,
So, no, that's huge. So a few years ago, we kept hearing about workforce development. And so we had, and I think this was maybe 17 or 18, we did a little summit, mini summit. And and you spoke there.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we talked about was the need for this dual enrollment,
Mhm.
in particular with high school and community colleges. What I was shocked to learn is that it's not utilized as much as I would think it would. And I'm one of those parents that didn't really push
Mhm.
my son to do that, and
Mhm.
we've regretted it ever since.
Mhm.
But talk a little bit about how that looks in Colorado for that dual enrollment, and especially since you have a wing of the high school in Durango. That's
Mhm.
tremendous.
Well, each one of the communities we serve is unique. So I will tell you first and foremost that our campus in Canyon City and the
Mhm.
Fremont County, they are rock stars as far as it comes to promoting concurrent enrollment. And they have board support, they have superintendent support, the principal of the high school. Canyon City really is the poster child for
Right.
promoting concurrent enrollment. In the southwest corner of the state, Fort Lewis has a big footprint.
Sure.
And, all of us have bachelor's,
Right.
master's degrees. And typically, as you said, high school counselors send students on that four-year
Four-year.
pathway.
yeah.
And so that's been a challenge for us to really develop relationships with the high school counselors so that they can understand and appreciate that not all students are four-year bound and not all students will be successful in that arena, and that our career and technical programs and our associate degrees are every bit as valuable
Yes.
if we really do want to promote access and affordability for every student that we serve. So that's been a challenge. And then in Pueblo, we have one of the largest school districts in the state,
Right.
and we're getting better. We're getting better at promoting concurrent enrollment in Pueblo. So the future is bright. The students and their families do not have to pay a penny for their tuition,
Right.
which is a fabulous opportunity because if you think about it, the money that they save in the first 2 years, if they complete an associate's, then can be used to go on and hopefully go beyond a bachelor's to
Right,
get those masters and higher degrees. And so I think now what the challenge is that with all of the financial constraints, the school districts are not paying for books and fees. And some of our career and technical programs have a lot of expense, welding
Right.
equipment or culinary arts equipment. And so we are very fortunate in Pueblo and in Pueblo County to have the Pueblo County excise tax that has been given to us from the county. And we are able to use a portion of that to help the students with their books and
Oh,
their fees and their supplies, which has been huge, which is really helped with the concurrent education growth here in Pueblo. So concurrent enrollment, I am probably the biggest advocate. You will hear me talk about it all the time,
Yes.
about the importance. And really, it is a tremendous opportunity to get our first generation students, get our first generation families engaged in higher ed, for them to see that it's not a scary proposition, that you're not going to lose your children if they have a good education, but it is absolutely a pathway to a great life and to individuals that will eventually become our leaders
Yeah.
and will contribute to the economic vitality of the communities we serve.
And that's, going back to the manufacturing and economic growth, in 2015-ish, we actually had a job fair at PCC that we set up with Congressman Tipton's office, and it
For
was
the
huge.
veterans, yes.
Yeah, and I think it was way bigger than I expected. And just looking back on it, I think we counted 80 people that got jobs out of that and still live here in Pueblo and contribute. But going back to what you said, that maybe a 2-year associate's degree is just as important for some people as a 4-year bachelor's degree or anything. One thing that the aerospace industry, they were advocating for was community colleges, because we went to a space symposium. I actually spoke at it, and one of the themes of it was you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work on rockets. And they had too many rocket scientists and not enough machinists,
Right.
or
The
engineers,
technicians,
the
yeah.
technicians, and that was huge. And that's where they were really hurting, because everybody wanted to go be this
Right.
big rocket scientist. And then looking back at it, the technicians and the manufacturers and the machinists, they make as much money as the rocket
yes.
scientist
Oh,
does.
yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it's frustrating too. And good. I remember going through all this school and looking back, and a couple of my friends went to PCC, and they were like making 3 times as much money as I was coming out. They had their house. They were 22 years old with the house and retirement, and just doing great. And that's important. And I'm seeing it more and more here in Pueblo. You're seeing an advocacy for that more here than I did when I was in high school. It's like, don't go to PCC.
Yeah.
They
Well,
said,
those are
"Don't."
fighting words now.
Yeah, I
Yes,
know.
they
I
are.
will
I
tell
know.
you. We just recently partnered with the Train Corporation and brought a FAME chapter to Pueblo. And this is a partnership between Train Industries, the community college, and the communities that they serve. And this is an industrial maintenance apprenticeship program. So young men and women who are just graduating from high school, may not know where they want to be or what path, can apply to this partnership. And then we have been able to attract various business and industries in the community that need industrial maintenance technicians. And so the students have to put on their best effort. The businesses interview these students.
Oh, yeah.
And then they hire who they think will be a good fit. The students have some classroom experience with us, and then they go to work for the business and industry. Well, long story short, we launched the inaugural cohort just this week, and I had the opportunity to meet, and it is a class of 15 young men. We don't have any women, but we're going to work on that for the next cohort. But 15 young men, and my heart was just filled. They were very young, 17, 18, 19-year-old men that all of us were so excited for them. I think we were happier for them than they were.
Yeah.
But we all kept saying, "Oh, this is such a great opportunity." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, we're something special." They are special because these young men are going to go to work in our manufacturing facilities. And you're right, they are not going to just make a livable wage. They are going to make well above a
Yes.
livable wage.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to buy a nice house and send their children to college and be contributing members of our community. And there is nothing shameful in that. I mean, that's
It's
our
so
roots,
needed.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
This is what we are all about. So I was just so excited. But when I looked at this group of 15 young men, I'm like, I think I could be their grandma. You know? But it was just so
They keep
exciting
getting
to think,
younger.
because you know what? Someone gave us those chances when we
Yes.
were that young. And I'm so thankful. And to be able to do that with this group of individuals, and for the business support that we've gotten is great. So we're looking forward to continuing this program and launching it in other sectors. Because if it works here, it could work in any one of the advanced manufacturing arenas.
Right.
So
When we went, Colorado Succeeds did a trip down to Tennessee a few years ago. We were on that trip, and they had a program like that where it was an apprenticeship. It was right out of high school. And it was tremendously impactful. These guys were making a lot more than anybody who had the 4-year degree, and they didn't have the burden of the debt. But and I kept asking, why aren't we doing apprenticeships in Colorado? So it's not just as easy. It's not easy to just go, we're going to do an apprenticeship program.
Right. Well, it's not. And I think that, and we talked about this last week, I don't think that business and industry don't want to do it. I think that they are so far in the hole right now.
Right.
There's such a large skills gap that keeping their production lines going with what they have is their first priority.
Right.
And so slowing it down a little bit and allocating some of their resources to help these apprentices, I don't think they can see the relevance of that at this point, because they need to be profitable. I'm sure they're backlogged in their production.
Right.
You know, scrap is a no-no in manufacturing. So all of those things are competing with what really needs to happen is slow down, take the time to bring these individuals into your facilities and be part of the solution. And so you can't blame them, but it's frustrating because we have to be able to partner and collaborate if we're going to solve this problem.
Yeah, they're looking at the next 3 months versus the next 4 years.
Right.
And it's a great return on investment to do this. But you're right. I think unfortunately right now, everybody's so far behind that they just don't have the time to do it.
And the other problem is, we get calls from business and industry all the time, and they really don't want our entry-level graduates. They want the person that has 3 or 4 years experience, that's really doesn't need any additional training. Well, you know what? They're not going to get to that point without taking a chance on some of these new grads.
Isn't that the curse of your first job after college?
Yeah.
It's like, I have my degree and it's like 5 years of experience needed. And
I know.
How do I get 5 years of experience?
It's not a new phenomenon, that's for sure.
So what happened with Train that they were able to do this? What mechanism was in place for them to?
Well, this was initiated wherever their corporate office is. And so I think Pueblo is not the only community, or Colorado is not the only state with a skills gap. And so I think Train put this together as an effort to fill their own personal skills gap. They saw the success, and then they just started moving it. We are the only FAME chapter west of the Mississippi.
So tell me what FAME is. I'm not familiar with that.
I knew you were going to ask that, and I do not know what that acronym stands for, but I should. And the dean is really going to be mad at me when I can't say it. But it is a chapter that talks about advanced manufacturing, something or other. I don't know.
Let's call it the future of advanced manufacturing and whatever the E would stand for.
I don't know.
Engineering.
There you go. Yeah.
But it's specifically to create that entrepreneurial
and it is
model.
specifically for industrial maintenance technicians. So I'm sorry. Jenny, I'm sorry if you're listening. I know I should know what FAME stands for.
That's okay.
There's too many acronyms.
Yeah.
There's so many. The worst meetings is sitting through like a briefing at Fort Carson or a military one, because it's all acronyms.
Oh,
and you just have to be
yeah.
like, well, you got the FAME on the zit to whatever, and it's
well, most of the time you can fake it unless someone calls you out and asks you, what does that mean?
Well,
you know?
my mom listens to every episode. She's a big fan of Brian's, and then she always says to me, if there's an acronym for something, nobody knows what you're talking about. So I always have to
it's
deep
good.
dive on that
It's
one.
good
I know. So we've been talking a lot. And the entire session was about this, and we're talking a lot about energy in this area and how that's going to work as well. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing on the energy side of it. So there's the engineering, the manufacturing. Now let's talk about energy. What are you seeing from your seat?
Well, that certainly seems to be the buzzword of the day, right? We want to be the renewable energy capital of the world, which we do. We want to be good stewards of our environment. And so we have partnered with Xcel Energy. They have been very aggressive in making sure that they are putting resources into the communities. And really, we actually, with their help and the help of Next Era
Mhm.
Energy, we installed a small solar farm on our campus as a learning lab for our students.
Oh, that's great.
And then we're partnering with some four-year institutions that are doing more of the engineering. So the technician is being coupled with the engineering to learn how to make sure that the energy fields are efficient. So our role in it, so people say, so do you have a degree in renewable energy? And it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So really, for us, it is providing the welders, providing the industrial maintenance, providing the machinists who build the solar fields. Really, after the solar fields are built, there's really very little maintenance that goes
Right.
into it. So
Right.
it really is in the construction of and making sure that the equipment is well maintained afterwards. That's our role of it.
Right.
you know,
Absolutely.
so,
Absolutely.
which is pretty
Is
good.
pretty
you
good.
know?
Yeah.
So
So we haven't gotten there yet. We're going to have Garrison Ortiz back on our show in the hopefully in the next couple of weeks to talk about. And we were both at this town hall. This is pretty exciting if this happens.
yeah, nuclear energy.
How would you start to work with them, or what would that kind of partnership look like to get these guys
Prepared.
tuned up?
Yeah.
Well, and it's different than the solar fields, right? Because with
Right.
nuclear energy, you have permanent technicians
Right,
that have to
right,
stay there.
Right.
So that would be more of a permanent renewable energy job. that would-
Right. Yeah, they would have to actually keep the facility up and running.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I'm excited for that. I think it's a great opportunity, very good paying jobs
Mhm.
that are sustainable.
Yeah.
Whereas building of the solar farms as we know it today, it's very transient. You know, you
Right.
build a farm and then you move on. And that's not what we want for our community.
Mhm.
We
Right.
want to train individuals and we want them to stay here and then again contribute to the economic vitality of our community. So it's my understanding that these are permanent jobs,
Right.
good paying jobs that are very technical in nature. And so we're ready to step up and partner if we get to that point. I hope that our community keeps an open mind about this.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
been a worry. It's a
Yeah.
little bit of a worry. Brian and I have both been, we've talked about this for years about the
Well,
nuclear side of it.
And the first time they were having this discussion was at a bad time for nuclear energy. And I remember just
a few
the
years ago. Yeah.
pushback on it back then. I
Mhm.
don't want to see that happen again.
Yeah. Well, we need to do a good job of educating the community and letting them know, this isn't, a potential we're going to blow up Pueblo kind of
Yeah.
thing, but that it's a safe
Yeah.
it's a safe way to really capitalize on fuel efficiencies.
Right.
But it's scary also, and so I think it's going to be important that we educate the community. We take the time to listen to their concerns, respond to their concerns, have further discussions instead of just saying, it's this way or the highway.
Yeah.
You.
So will you talk about some of your other programs that have just, for whatever reason, you guys have had for a long time and there continues to be a demand for them?
Well, I think that probably the program that we're seeing the most growth in right now is computer information technology. It's just growing by leaps and bounds. Secured software development, as you know, is a big issue right now. We recently added a Bachelor's of Applied Science in Secured Software Development.
Wow.
And this year, Pueblo Community College is going to have its first sport, and that is
What?
esports. So
Oh.
we're not into the athletic sports, but we are going to have esports, which I am told is pretty lucrative area to get involved in. So all those gamers out there that are interested in computer information technology, we have a great opportunity to teach you and to have some fun with it.
So can I go enroll in classes and then
I was-
become an esports?
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
did you see how he lit
I
up
know.
when you said that? It's all happy.
I play a lot of video games.
Well, I
Still.
think that you can make a lot of money
I
at
know.
that, at these tournaments and everything. So I'm like, whoa, maybe I should go, learn a few things too.
Yeah.
So,
Brian.
Well, I need to tell this to my kids because they're
Yeah.
obsessed with it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they don't know what they're going to do. Maybe this is it.
Oh, I will tell you, that is really a very popular, and I will tell you, it's the program that has grown the most over the last
Wow.
couple of years.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, all of our healthcare programs are
Yes.
still
Yeah.
very, very popular, very much in demand. And when you talk about earning a great wage, our dental hygienists will
Mhm.
graduate and they will earn $80,000 right out of
With an
college
associate's degree.
with an associate's
Yes.
degree, and they don't even work 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
They're at, whatever the schedule of the dentist's office is. So that's a really, really good profession. Our nurses, although my goodness, boy, haven't they done just a tremendous job over the
Oh
last
my
18
goodness,
months.
yes.
But nurses, can make anywhere $60,000, $70,000. Our respiratory care program, which again, we've needed so many respiratory care technicians over the last 18 months, make a very good wage. Our radiology technology program, the imaging folks make great wages. So really, most of the healthcare programs are, if you can get a job or get through the program, you're going to have a great job. And again, very, very important to our community, which is an aging community. We want to have
Right.
good health care. I always tell the students at the beginning of the year, look at this face. And when you see it, you take good care of it when she comes your way,
Yeah.
And they're all looking at me like,
They're
what's
like,
she
"What is
talking
she
about,
meaning?"
But
We're not
it
ready
is.
for that,
We're
yeah.
training them to take care of us, to take care of our families. And so we're hard on them. There's a lot of rigor, but they come out very, very good nurses.
And most of them stick around.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
They stay in these communities to serve these communities that come through. So that's a huge part of it too.
And that you bring up a good point. That's the other thing about community colleges. Our students typically are from the area.
Yeah.
That's why they come to a community college. They want to stay in the area, opposed to our four-year colleagues who do a lot of recruiting out of state, and then
Yeah.
many of those students return to their homes.
When we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to ask Patty or Dr. Erjavec to get out her crystal ball and talk about what she sees in the future for our communities and what could actually be done to make that as prosperous as possible. Stick around. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. We are sitting here with Dr. Patty Erjavec, the president of Pueblo Community College, who has been there just over a decade and has made tremendous strides. Really a formidable community college. Before we get too far into talking about the future, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about the veteran piece and what you provide there and how you're developing that. And especially because it's a passion, particularly of Brian's, and he's doing so much work in that arena right now, really picking up and where he left off and taking it a little bit further. But we had this conversation about the veteran piece. So tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing and how you're developing those services for veterans who are looking to go to school.
Well, in my opinion, we're not doing enough. And I know that there is a significant veteran population living in the Pueblo West area.
Right.
And we need to engage with those individuals and really help them develop a career path where they do not have to start all over. Once they're discharged from the military, they don't have to start from the very beginning. We will be able to offer them an opportunity to take whatever skills they've learned and integrate that into a career path, so that they don't have to take all the credits over. And so their work experience can count as credits earned.
That's important because the biggest thing coming out of the war on terror and going back to school, you had a lot of these veterans that came out 2004, 2005, and they would have to start over. And they didn't understand why, even for a community college, like, why do I have to get this certificate? Because I already did this in the military and have a military certificate. But at that time, the universities and schools would not recognize that as an equivalent.
Right. Well, community colleges do.
Yes.
And we will award credit for prior learning or credit for prior experience. And so many of our veterans are well versed in paramedics, in law enforcement, in CIS, a variety of occupations, in welding and mechanics and machining. So why not take that experience and just get them the additional academics that they need so that then they can go back into the workforce quickly and begin their life in a civilian environment. So we're not doing enough. We somehow need to find a way to reach out to our veteran population. They're a very confined group of people, very proud people, and I still haven't developed the right pathway to really engage with them. But that doesn't mean we don't want to.
Yeah.
And I know that you're going to help me do that
Yes.
because it is very important. Also, Bob McLaughlin
Right.
is working on bringing a chapter of
Mount Carmel.
down to Pueblo, and he's very interested in partnering with PCC. So I think that if enough of us really continue to work towards the goal of really engaging more veterans, that's another huge source for filling the skills gap.
Yes.
And it's also a tremendous opportunity to honor those men and women that have served and that just want to come back and now contribute to their own families and communities.
Right.
So,
I keep meaning to ask you this, but why do you think that is? Where do you think that gap is?
Veterans are a grumpy group of people. And they don't want to hear anything from anybody unless it's a fellow veteran or somebody they served with. And I think that's a challenge. If you look at both PCC, I remember it was Andrew Foster, I think his name was, that set up the vet center there.
Yes.
And even CSU Pueblo, when Paul and them did theirs, that opened it up because, again, and I'm not disparaging veterans, but they are kind of like in their little group, and it's like everything.
Right.
And part of it is they're used to that, and then they get out and they need that still to continue. Not all of them, but they're used to a regiment. They're used to being told what to do and guided along the way. And so you need somebody that can relate to that to kind of bring them in, somebody else that's a veteran or somebody that served with them and share it. Because if it's like a commercial on TV or a billboard or some 24-year-old shows up to say, hey, we need veterans, they're going to be like, who's
Go
this
away,
guy?
yeah.
Go away.
Yeah.
But if their friend and fellow veteran shows up, or if you get them early on when they're transitioning out of the military, I think that's the key piece. If you really focus on their out processing side, and part of that too, they're still under that mindset of a regime, like a regiment every day.
Right.
So coming in, so if they're still in that mindset, you grab them and then bring them in, that's how they're going to succeed. The problem is if they've been out for 5 or 6 years, then they kind of lose their military ways, and then a lot of them go the complete opposite, and that's where it gets kind of tough. So there's no real answer, no right answer.
There's no right answer.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's something you're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, I think you just need somebody that knows how to speak veteran
Right.
to talk
You
to
need
them.
an interpreter and a navigator.
Mm-hmm.
That we talk about this a lot because it's such a huge, it's a huge need. And we keep throwing everything veteran at Brian. And at some point, he'll have it all figured out.
Yeah, well, you're very lucky to have him because he is very committed and passionate about it, and we do need those advocates.
Yeah.
And I remember we had a few meetings that you were at when we were trying to just have conversations with the veterans. I couldn't talk at all. I mean, they had something to say. They weren't going to listen, and thank goodness you were there because we finally came to the point where they wanted their own space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, they wanted their own space. And I was worried about how that would look to all the other clubs, all the other infinity groups that we have on campus, because we certainly couldn't accommodate it. But boy, they were relentless, and we found a way to give them
To
a
make that
space,
work.
and it was the best thing we ever did.
Yeah.
It really, truly was. So I learned a huge lesson from the veterans, and I just wish that we could do more.
and they would call me every other week to buy them coffee. I wrote it over
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
'Cause
that and coffee,
Yeah,
that will
I-
do, that goes a long way.
And and they knew, I forget who was working there at the time, because I lived, like, I could see where the office was out of my front
Yeah,
window.
yeah.
So it's like, hey, you got any coffee? Like, would show up at my house, like, you guys got any coffee, Brian? I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, hold on.
Yeah,
Give 'em a
yeah,
bag of coffee.
that is true. The coffee is a pretty important
Yeah.
thing, but the pride is too.
Yeah,
And so I hope that as we move forward, we really can bring the additional resources that I know Bob has
Yeah.
planned, and we can just continue to move forward.
We will have Bob on the show somewhere down the road. There's a lot of initial work that's happening right now. So when he gets a little bit more established, we're
Oh,
gonna
you should
him
have
on.
him. He's a great guest, and he
Yeah.
is so colorful. He has
He's-
done so much, you know. So.
Brian had a meeting with him the other day, and
Mhm.
I just went in, and I wasn't going to be a part of. I just was a fly on the wall, and it was fun to watch. I'm not a veteran, but I've done a lot of work along those lines in the various lives I've had, and no, he's a delight, and I'm very excited to see what's going to happen here. And I'm always asking the question, what do they need? What does our community need? What's our community need? So it sounds like they might be on top of it. So speaking of what our community needs, crystal ball, if you could drive the economy, you had whatever resources, whatever, what's going to make a difference for coming out of COVID for our communities?
Well, first of all, we have to stop competing with each other.
yes.
And we really, really need to start collaborating. And I've been very involved with the One Pueblo initiative,
Right.
which is what we really are hoping to accomplish, is that there are so many great nonprofits in our community, so many great educational, business and industry, but sometimes we're our own worst enemy. We're the only ones that can do it well. We have to be in charge. We have to do it all.
Right.
When really, if we pull all of the resources, all of the talent, and we each contribute what our special piece is, we'll go a lot further. And that's my opinion.
No, I love that
know.
you say that, because I often say the big thing that's hard for people who don't work in the rural space to understand is that we're generations of competing for limited resources. It's
Oh.
generations and generations of doing that. We don't know how to do it any other way.
Mhm.
But how do we flip that switch? How do we do it differently?
Yeah.
Is the key piece.
And I think that our rural areas, they've changed dramatically, even my tenure at PCC. I know initially we would go down to the southwest corner and we would talk about using technology, putting technology in the classroom, teaching from Pueblo, and they didn't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Because their children deserved every bit as face-to-face as any Denver school or Denver entity, and they wanted that for their children as well. Well, in a perfect world, we would all want that.
Right.
But there's just not enough capacity and volume in some of our small rural areas. But there would be if we partnered with individuals in La Junta and Lamar and Trinidad and Pueblo, and we all came together. All of a sudden, a program that would never make because it only had 2 people in each one of those communities
Right.
can make now, because now there's 10 or 15. And so this student who would never be able to pursue a criminal justice degree, all of a sudden can live in Lamar and pursue that degree.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's wonderful. And
Yes.
but I also would tell you that our rural communities have changed a lot, and they're willing to accept that now. And so we need high-speed bandwidth
Oh my
in all of our
goodness.
communities so that we really can utilize the technology and really come together and again, at the end of the day for me, it's what's in the best interest of students. And
Right.
why wouldn't a student in Lamar or Trinidad be able to pursue a degree in political science or some mass comm or whatever
Right.
it is, just because they live in Lamar and there's only one other person in the community that wants it? They deserve that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think the other one, and it goes back to when we were working on the 4-year degree. I didn't even know that this was a thing, and I should have, for the nursing degree. And you had to literally go before the legislature, and I went up and testified. But I was so mad at these universities who did not want community colleges to be able to have a 4-year degree for nursing.
Yeah.
And they were going out of state, they were waitlisting, they were doing all of these other things. And ultimately, you won the argument and you won the fight, and they had the 4-year, but it's not just competing with each other. I think so often we have to put up a fight with bigger, more resources and that sort of thing. There's no way we're going to be able to put up that kind of fight if we don't collaborate
Right.
with each
And,
other.
and in that particular case, there's no way that every institution in Colorado who has a nursing program is still going to be able to fill the skills gap.
Yeah.
So we
Right,
need to all work together.
exactly.
It's not a matter of if only you had it, you're going to be able to solve all the problems of the world. That's not true. Every one of us, all of the community colleges, all of the 4 years together will never solve the problem.
Right.
And so why not work together and
Why
make
not
sure
make
yeah,
sure that every
yeah,
opportunity is
Yeah.
leveraged,
Mhm.
every opportunity to do that.
yeah.
So on the workforce development, what's going to make a difference for all of these things? And is it industry to industry, or because that's the big, everybody, we don't have the job.
Yeah, I think one thing is it can't take 2 or 3 or 4 years to get a degree. We have to be much more nimble, much more reactive. And who says it all has to be for credit? You know,
Right.
why can't we be offering some non-credit certifications coupled with some apprenticeships that will get people the skills that they need? So, and don't get me wrong, I am all about for credit
Absolutely.
and degree completion. But I think that for that adult learner, just getting a job is what's important. And if you have a family and if you have other obligations, you really can't afford to spend 2 or 3 or 4 years
Right.
getting a degree.
So is it the industries that need to accept the certifications, or just the colleges that can provide specific certifications, or is it a both?
Well, I think right now, business and industry will take you if you're just
Yeah.
willing to show up.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I don't mean that, but you know what I'm saying.
No, I do.
But so I think I don't think the degree and I think a certification is probably more important than a degree right now.
Right.
And that if we can provide some evidence of some competencies, business and industry would be willing to take you. Even though we just talked about the fact that they really want the experienced person. We're to the point now where we're not going to be, our standards aren't going to be as great. And I also think that as the world looks at diversity and inclusion more, that the perfect candidate is not necessarily the one that has a master's degree and all of
Right.
this experience. The perfect candidate might be that first generation student who has a certificate and a few years of experience. And that really, so for me, it really is higher ed education needs to be much more nimble, much more fluent, much more responsive. And then again, closely working with business and industry and providing what they need opposed to what we think they need.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the federal government actually did this about 2 years ago. You know, you apply for a federal job and it was like, it requires a master's degree. And 2 years ago, I think it was, they stopped doing that, where it was, hey, if you have certificates or experience, we'll take that in lieu of education and an actual master's degree or bachelor's degree. And because they're having a hard time filling jobs that are a necessity, from like the VA to the prisons or whatever. And it was interesting to see that shift. But then you go and you still apply for like a larger company, and they're still requiring that master's degree versus experience or certifications. So I'm hoping that will transition to the private sector like the federal government did.
I think it is. I think that at least I know that we're doing that in the community college system.
Yeah.
You know, there's a huge emphasis on diversity and inclusion and equity, and you know, really making sure that a group of people that we traditionally have not looked to
Right.
fill the skills gap, we are looking to them.
Good.
And we're supporting them in ways that we should have always been supporting them, but we haven't. And so giving everyone the same opportunity, regardless of who you are, or where you live, or the color of your skin, is terribly, terribly important as we move forward.
Well, and maybe that's one of the blessings of the whole pandemic, was that it gave us the opportunity, or it was a necessity, to reimagine what it would look like to do something completely different. You know, there were things that I remember that we were talking about before the pandemic that, oh, we'd really like to see this happen. And then necessity is the mother of invention. And all of a sudden that's where we're at. And so, like you said, I think if everybody wants to be more, take a more collaborative approach, and that's what we've been talking about a lot, is that it has to be a regional thing. It can't be, we can't, like you said, you know, you can't put people in different boxes and expect, you know, there's only 3 or 4 here and 3 or 4 here. But if you put everybody in the box together, you're going to be so much more powerful in all of your efforts. And it's something, again, that's needed to happen for a really long time. But right now is the opportunity to do it. I'm really hoping, and just even visiting with some of your colleagues with other community colleges. Everybody wants to move in that direction. They've all indicated in one way or another they want to move in that direction. So it's just trying to, you guys are going to be the pioneers in the forefront of doing that. So on the vision side of it, we ended up talking a lot about housing, and we were trying to put together really just a discussion about housing. And then we were in it for 5 or 10 minutes, and we're like, this is a much, much, much more complicated. So as we're looking at what's needed for us to do, we want to have those conversations. So is housing something that comes up as a barrier for community college, or for any of those things? How is the housing crisis, I'm going to call it that, affecting where you're at?
Well, it is affecting economic development, without a doubt. Because we're a commuter college, we are not affected as much, other than when we try to hire people to come to work for us from another city or another state, and they need housing. So it's not as big of an issue for the college. I will say the homeless student is a bigger issue than
Talk about that for a second.
anything. We have a lot of students that don't have homes,
Wow.
that live out of their cars or wherever.
I'd heard that before. When I was working on some things with Paul Hendrickson, who you talked about a minute ago, with the veteran community. It was the couch surfing.
Yeah, we have a lot of that.
Part of that.
And that just breaks your heart. And so that's why, you know, retaining students and getting them across the finish line is so important to me. You know, it's like, this cannot be the community that I live in, that people don't have homes, or, you know, can't afford a home. You know, so housing is a big issue. Good quality childcare is an issue.
Okay.
Food insecurities are an issue, and mental health. Those are the things that I think are the real barriers for individuals not pursuing a higher ed, because it really comes down to surviving versus thriving.
Right.
And, you know, they do what they need to do to survive. And, you know, if you have X amount of dollars and it's going to put food on the table, or, you know, buy you a class, what are they going to do?
Exactly.
You know? Although I would argue that there's plenty of financial support for individuals right now to get an education and walk away without any debt. So right now is the time for individuals to enroll and really take advantage of the Pell, all of the scholarships that our foundation offers, the excise tax that has been afforded the community colleges, or Pueblo Community College, to offer scholarships, and then all of the HERFA dollars that are available right now. Right now is the time for people.
And it's, you do as much for non-traditional students as you do for the ones that are coming right out of high school. Yes. So talk a little bit about those programs.
So we have learned over time that it's much more than getting someone to enroll in college. You know, we have to be able to provide all of the wraparound services and the support for quite frankly, all of our students so that they can continue to persist. And we're in the education business. We're not in the mental health business. We're not in the food business or the housing business. So it's really been important for us to form really solid partnerships with those people that are the experts. So we have a partnership with Pueblo Community Health Center. They run our health clinic and they provide mental health issues. We have a really strong partnership with Care and Share, and they provide food to our Panther pantry so that our students have food. And so really what we have tried to do is reach out and make sure that those resources are on campus. It's one thing to say, sure, you need help, go there. It's another thing to say, let me walk you across campus.
Yeah.
Oh,
Let
yeah,
me introduce
sure, for
you to
sure.
so-and-so. And so that's the other huge lesson that I've learned. You can have all the programs in the world, but really you need somebody to say, I really care about you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to walk you over to the pantry, or I'm going to introduce you to, the nurse practitioner at the health clinic, or
Whatever. Yeah.
whatever.
So we've got 1 minute left. So I'm going to ask my favorite question. If there's something that you wish everybody understood, or the person that you don't work with every day, or just parents or anybody who's looking at education, what's the one thing that you wish they understood that maybe they don't?
Well, you know where I'm going with this one. I wish that every individual in our service area really understood that a good education is going to mean a great life, a safe community, a healthy community, and that we would really grow and we would be having a much different conversation if that were in place, if we had a highly educated community.
I love it. Well, we're out of time. Join us next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week, but
Talk
Brian-
about UFOs again.
oh, I'd love to talk about UFOs. We've got so many people that we want to have on our show, but we really appreciate you, Patty, for joining Action 22, for being with us today. If you're not currently a member of Action 22, then now's the time to join. Get a hold of Brian at show@action22.org, and he will get you all set up. There's really no reason for you not to be. If you're in any kind of leadership role, this is where you're going to find a lot of influence and ways to get things done that you haven't thought of before. Join us next week, and we'll talk more about what's happening in Southern Colorado and how we're going to move forward in a really great and productive way. We'll see you then.